Hello and welcome to Lytham Hall. I'm Alan Hume and I'm here with my good friend John Horniak.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about the redwood trees because we have a collection of redwoods here and we've just been awarded national collection status for our collection of giant redwoods and also for our collection of coastal redwoods, which is very exciting, I'm sure you'll agree.
And of course, Alan, the thing looking at this tree behind me and the ones on the other side, you might say, well, they don't look very big to me at the moment. And that, of course, is the whole story. Why have we got the national collection? What are we going to do with it? This only started, our first tree here was planted only in 2015. And it means we can monitor in real time, which is unique to the UK. From the day of planting forever. And that's so important.
These trees are right at the beginning of their lives, aren't they, John?
Absolutely they are.
Because they do potentially live 3,500 years. That's quite a way to look ahead when planting and imagining the future. We've got quite a dynamic situation here at Lytham Hall, but is it well suited to redwoods?
Absolutely, it's well suited. There's a lot of research papers, particularly one that came out only a year ago, that suggests that the growth rate of redwoods in the UK, particularly on the western seaboard, is actually comparable with those in California, where these trees are native. Remember, in California, that's the last vestige of these two magnificent species as original old growth trees. What we're trying to do is to make sure that in this Goldilocks climate we can monitor, measure and actually tell people how important they are and show people, not just in Lytham, not just in the UK, but worldwide from a conservation point of view and also horticultural significance in your gardens, in your estates, maybe on your golf courses.
Okay, so here behind me is our original planting of a redwood. This is from 2015 that it got planted here, and this is a giant redwood, Sequoiadendron giganteum. And you can see it's got quite thin growth, it's got needles which are quite close to the branches, but what's particularly interesting for us is the amount of extension growth that's being put on. That's the growth going on the ends of the branches and at the top of the tree, because we can see, without measuring, we can see that the scales on those sections of the tree are really quite widely spaced. So in one season they're putting on a lot of growth. And that's one of the things that led us to measuring the growth here and seeing how long they're growing for over the course of the year and also year on year.
Absolutely. And here, in contrast, is the coastal redwood. This is Sequoia sempervirens. This is the one that actually represents the tallest tree in the world. Now, let's just contrast it slightly because it clearly looks quite different to the Sequoiadendron. The Sequoia sempervirens has a leaf not unlike our native yew. However, underneath it has a white or grey underneath to those leaves. Other similarities, of course, are it is an evergreen. And there's only one other redwood that actually loses its leaves, and that's called a metasequoia, the dawn redwood. We'll talk about that another day. But the other important thing from a national collection point of view is that we're making sure from a reference point of view that people can choose these for their gardens if appropriate. We can look at varieties that have occurred in the wild or cultivars that are now cultivated, and here's a perfect example. This is Sequoia sempervirens and the cultivar is Cantab. Notice that it's somewhat more ad-pressed, it's compact if you like. This is the sort of size we have been planting, anything from this sort of size up to here, and Alan in a moment will be telling you about where and why we've planted, and we'll also be looking at some other cultivars. But it's quite important to remember that in some cases the smaller you plant, the better the establishment. This one over here was only a foot high, 30 centimetres when we planted it in 2015. It's got its feet in now. Notice the contrast between the natural species of Sequoia sempervirens here and this cultivar, which is called Cantab, Sequoia sempervirens Cantab. It's very much ad-pressed, if you like, condensed. It's a beautiful cultivar. Again, you'll see that lovely grey underneath, and incidentally, you'll see it's very, very dense as well. Notice also that every single tree in our collection has a unique accession number. This is a Botanic Garden standard that means we can identify and we know exactly the origin, where it's planted, and we can record information and photographs on a regular basis. Alan mentioned about growth rates. We were going to do an annual audit. We're now moving to a monthly one because of the growth rates being so fast.
So as John just said, these cultivars, these different varieties of the redwoods are planted around the parkland. We're trying to imagine features for the future, so some avenues in strategic places which will show the variety of growth, the variety of different cultivars within each species. There are a lot of differences between them, so it's nice to have them grouped together as well, and we've tried to do that so we can compare the different types of growth, the different colours and so on as you walk around. And they're stirring up a lot of interest here at Lytham Hall, aren't they, John?
Absolutely they are. And not just at Lytham Hall actually. We've had all sorts of messages, all positive, from literally all over the UK, but even from California itself. Very impressed with what you're doing. It's surprising how close we are botanically with people that we've got in the big national collections over in California. But it's also amazing how sometimes we don't quite say it the same way. We can share our knowledge and we can gain knowledge, of course, from America, where the originals are still struggling on the endangered list, dying out, forest fires, you name it, but a huge groundswell in the USA to preserve their amazing trees. And similarly here, we have a very big part to play. Well, here we are. Would you believe that this is Sequoiadendron giganteum? I can assure you it is. Remember, we talked about cultivars. We also talked about the importance of showing, if you like, the good, the bad and the ugly. And this is part of the national collection. Look how unusual it is. It is the sort of thing that gardeners love, something unusual, something special. And of course, in the case of this one, which is Sequoiadendron giganteum pendulum, hence the weeping habit, look at that. The weeping habit, it's so much more useful in smaller gardens, or maybe as a statement, almost a sculpture in a shopping centre or wherever it might be. It also demonstrates the huge breadth of these gorgeous species. So really, that's part of the story, but really we need to have a look from the other side to see another thing about this particular tree.
As with a lot of the other redwoods, you can see clearly in this tree the growth that's been put on this season. It's not just from these closely placed scales here where the colour changes. That's the second part of this last growing season. It actually started down here. So all this growth has been put on over the last growing season, and it's extended well into winter as well, which is particularly interesting. What's also interesting is the way this cultivar grows. It wants to be pendulous, it wants to droop and twist around, so we do need to give it a bit of extra help to encourage it to grow a bit more upright and support it as it grows. Here we are with another cultivar of the giant redwood, Sequoiadendron giganteum. This is called powdered blue, and it is indeed a fantastic blue colour. This one is clearly very happy growing here. It's put on a lot of growth since 2022. The first intersection is down here, and then in the next year it grew to this point, and this year it's grown all the way up here. It's really reaching for the sky, and I really love this blue colour. It's like a steely blue. Obviously the tree looks very healthy, it's very happy where it's growing, and in fact we have something of a Goldilocks climate here at Lytham Hall for these trees. It's pretty wet, but also we get the mists coming off the sea regularly, and the trees can absorb some of that moisture through the leaves directly as well as through the roots. So it's clearly very happy, and you know, it's great to have these trees growing here. We've planted these relatively recently, but they were here before, weren't they, John?
They certainly were. It's quite nice actually, because we have documentary evidence from the Journal of Horticulture 1872, that's 1872, about a visitor talking to the head gardener and saying, "Wow, your giant redwoods are doing so well." Just bear in mind, redwoods of this kind were only introduced into the UK in 1853, and this is 1852 when the journal actually recorded that evidence. The most fabulous thing, I think, is that clearly the climate was good. When we came, we unfortunately had found they'd been removed, but they're back.
We've just moved round towards the edge of the woodland here, because this is where we got this variety of coastal redwood planted called High Ranch Blue, and as you can see it's a gorgeous bluey green colour. I mean the foliage looks particularly smart. It only went in last year, this one, but already it's putting on quite a bit of growth just like the others, so it seems to be very happy here. There is quite a wide range of diversity in these trees, and that's why it's so good to have different varieties planted here at Lytham Hall, so you can walk around and look at them, compare them and see that variety for yourself. But this one we think is particularly promising, don't we, John?
We do.
For the colour, for the fact that it could probably be clipped like a yew tree. This could be a potentially very, very useful plant.
Absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing is that as a cultivar, this one has not yet been approved by the RHS, except to say that I have just found out that RHS Wisley down in Surrey, who incidentally have just been awarded at the same time a national collection of the giant redwoods, but not the coastal redwoods, have actually planted one of these High Ranch Blues in Wisley Gardens. They consider it to be one of the most magnificent cultivars they've ever seen, and I could do nothing but agree. And that's why it's here, because in the future, if this is good enough, we will be recommending that this goes on to the RHS accepted list, so it can be used by gardeners all over the UK. It can, for all we know with our measurements on a monthly basis, it might be the most amazing discovery ever. Who knows? And that is the value of a national collection that is properly monitored.
So thanks for joining us today and starting to look at our redwood collection here at Lytham Hall. We've got a lot to look forward to. These are exciting times. We've got leaflets on the way, trails, conferences, exhibitions, and who knows what else. So yeah, thank you for your interest, and well, let's look forward to the next steps in this exciting story.
Absolutely, and I would very much like to take this opportunity really to say thank you, Phil Downey and Yolanda. Thank you so much for all your input over the years, and particularly today. And the other group of people I really have to thank, of course, has to be those people that have actually donated and actually paid for these trees, and they've adopted them. Because after all, this is a community project. The community here is fabulous, and that's why we're here. Thank you.